to the planning board meeting of May 10th, 2017 at 7:05. Present, we have Pam Humphrey, clerk, board, Guy Horn, member, Sean Guerin, member, and Marcia Wagner, vice chair. First thing on the agenda, approval of the minutes of April 5th and April 26th, 2017. Have the members had a chance to read the minutes?
Yep.
Okay. I have a motion to accept them.
I'll make a motion to accept minutes from April 5th and March 26th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
I'll be abstaining from that vote because I wasn't present at those two meetings.
Thank you.
I think you said
Actually, I wasn't present at the
March 25th.
26th. I'm sorry.
April.
April.
March
Oh, did I?
26th.
I'm sorry.
Correct
here?
that way.
I wasn't here last week.
Okay.
I wasn't either, so I can only do them,
Okay, so
the
let's,
fifth one.
okay, so let's do them separately.
I did read
April-
what was listed though. So.
Okay, so for April 5th, who was here? Sean, you were here. And Pam, you were here. So let's take a vote on that date, April 5th.
We're here, sort of. Spirit, anyway.
Spirit, yeah.
And voice.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for April 5th.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? All in favor? Accepted. And then, do we have a consensus for April 26th? Can we vote on that one?
I was here on the 26th, but it was just myself and Mr. Mazziotti, so maybe we hold off until
Okay,
he's
we'll
back.
hold off on that. April 26th. Okay, the second item on the agenda, fiscal year 2018 budget. Can you help us with that, Don?
Same as it was. The only difference is that the GIS, the $1,000 is not being funded. Other than that, it's the same as it was submitted. That's how it's working. It's on
Okay.
the copy in there.
Do we as a board need to do anything on that?
Just to keep you up to date.
Okay, thank you. The third item, comments to the Board of Selectmen Planning Board action on the petition to accept Dave's Way as a town way. So I'd like to open that for discussion. Just to bring me up to snuff, what requirements were we waiting for to have that approved?
They've been done. Well, two things we were looking for. We're looking for our consulting engineer to go out there. I was out there with him Thursday afternoon. He submitted a report. You have a copy of it in there. Everything that he had asked for and several years back had been done, and it was still in effect. It was still good.
So,
The highway superintendent asked for a few things. You have a list of that in his letter. But what I hear at the selectmen's meeting on Wednesday night, they voted to accept the street, and they would like us to reiterate our comments that we sent them as a separate cover. We essentially reiterated that we had already voted on this several years back, but they would like to hear from us again, so if we could re-vote that recommendation.
What exactly are we re-voting?
Recommendation that the board made several years back, which was to approve roadway, recommendation to approve the roadway, subject to the checklist being fulfilled from the highway superintendent and the consulting engineer to the planning board, and that's been done, so.
so you're saying that we have had approval by the highway department and the town engineer
Right.
for what was remaining, and that's been completed. Do we have anything in writing to show us that, or
They just did it Monday night, so.
they just
The
did it?
report from the engineer. We don't have anything from the selectmen, but I
Okay.
understand they vote, well, actually we do. They did sign the plan. The planning board will sign it tonight, approval not required, so it can get recorded. It needs planning board endorsement to be recorded. It's not a subdivision, it's just a as-built and acceptance plan, so.
So the Board of Selectmen signed it Monday night? Sorry, they did.
So
Okay.
do we have to vote again on that as-built plan?
you vote to endorse it, I guess it wouldn't do any harm to do that. What they recommended, they asked for an update on the planning board's recommendation, the way I understand it, so it would just be a matter of sending out a letter to the selectmen saying that the board voted to reiterate their approval of the,
So we basically can vote for that approval, as long as those recommendations are met at present.
which they actually have been.
So I know a little bit about the project. There was a manhole that was supposed to be raised, some chip sealing to be done, and some trees. That's all been completed.
Been done.
Okay.
I forgot what, I heard that the highway superintendent said the other night was something to the effect of they revitalized the place. Brought it back to life, that's what it was.
Okay. And we have letters from him, or we can get a letter from him?
You can get a letter from him, yes. It was just Monday night that took place. I wasn't there, but I heard from the selectman's office.
So should we vote on the contingency that we see those letters?
I would.
I think you just vote on the,
My recommendation is,
vote the recommendation to approve the layout, subject to verification that the plan has been completed to the satisfaction of the highway superintendent and the board's consulting engineer. Essentially the way it was voted before.
I couldn't hear what you said after you said approve subject to.
The recommendations of the highway superintendent and the planning board's consulting engineer.
Okay.
We already have the letter from the consulting engineer?
Do.
So we
You
would
have
just-
it?
is that here, or is that?
It's in the book.
It's under section C.
There's no section C. Cited.
That's GEI.
That's something different.
This is Dave's. That's Dave's way.
That's combined?
Do you see it?
So Don, when you were walking at everything that's been done
Walked it,
except
I've
for number
driven it
9,
several times.
Yeah, you have it.
so to you it looks good?
Yes.
Ready, those are Dave's letter, okay.
Then I would suggest we probably make a motion to approve Dave's Way and accept the submitted acceptance plan contingent to the highway superintendent giving the final blessing, basically.
I understand he gave his final blessing verbally the other night. I understand he gave his blessing verbally the other night.
Okay,
Everything has to be in writing.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, that shouldn't be too hard for him to just write out a note that it's okay. I mean, we can make the approval contingent to the letter, as long as he gets the letter.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Horn, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Dave's Way for acceptance as a town road, and that we also accept the, what's the plan called?
Verification, let's see, from the town planning board's consulting engineer and from the highway superintendent that all the work has been done, all the work that they requested has been done.
Okay, and the acceptance plan with verification from the consultant town engineer and the town highway superintendent, that all the work has been done and everything is where it needs to be. And then the planning board would be basically signing off.
That's correct. We'll take a separate motion to endorse the plan, signatures for recording. You want to take a separate vote on that, or do you want to include it as part of the motion?
I think it can all be the same,
I
right?
think it could all be the
Yeah.
same.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any objections?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay. Fourth on the agenda, discussion of finishing construction of and acceptance of uncompleted, unaccepted subdivision streets.
You have a report in there, in your package from Graves Engineering about the site visit to Pierpont Estates.
Uh-huh.
That's all we really have is an update on that one this time around.
I didn't hear the last
That's all we
sentence.
have is an update on that one this time around.
Okay. So nothing to consider for tonight for a vote. Okay. Next item, discussion of economic development planning options.
Well, you probably know we've received a grant of sorts from, under the District Local Technical Assistance Program through CMRPC. It's the first phase of a, what it's supposed to be a three-phase comprehensive economic development plan. This is the information collection phase, essentially. They're starting to work with us in June. It's an information, they'll do a complete inventory of all the economic development assets in town. We'll hold a, what you probably know is a SWOT meeting, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we'll hope to get an idea of where the town wants to go. And the next phase will be subject to some future funding under another program. That'll be the actual implementation, map changes, and funding mechanisms and that sort of thing, whatever comes out of it. So that's in the future. But between June and, well, December, I guess it would be, we'll work on that phase, the first phase we're talking about, the inventory and the recommendations.
So inventory, where our infrastructure is, where we have room to add commercial or industrial,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Right. And it's not just zoning either. There could be all kinds of things. It could be policies. It could be economic development. It's tourism, farming. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. We'll do a complete inventory, present it to the public, and have a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats meeting, and come up with the ideas of where we want to go, how we want to get, how we're all going to get there. Be the next phase.
Okay.
And the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, would like a joint meeting with the planning board. We're scheduled with the selectmen on the 21st of June. They would like to meet with the planning board as well.
Is that in the evening?
Yes, 7 o'clock.
Is that a regularly scheduled planning board meeting, or is it an additional?
Sorry?
meeting? Is that a regularly scheduled planning board meeting, or is it?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
It's the off week. That's the third week.
Okay. Anything else on that subject?
Oh, you look in your file, you'll find that we've been invited to attend the annual dinner on June 8th, 2017 at the Blackstone National Golf Club in Sutton. Director of CMRPC says, I am pleased to announce CMRPC is presenting the Community Development and Planning Community Partner Award to the town of Dudley. Congratulations. Please let me know how many will be attending from the town on or before Friday, May 26th. So, leave it up to you.
What day of the week is that?
Friday.
What time?
I'm sorry, it's June 8th? June 8th. It is a Friday, yes. At,
Where is that in the book, Don?
our correspondence, I think.
Well, we can get to that afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, next on the agenda, discussion on use of remaining green community funds.
As far as I know, the town administrator is signing off on the plan and I should say the plan, the supplies and the installation of the energy efficient lighting at the highway garage. I think that'll be done over the next couple of months, and we're still working on the idler right systems for the police cruisers. And
I'm sorry?
The idler right systems for the police cruisers. It's an electrical system that shuts off the engine apparently when they're idling and saves fuel.
Are we any closer to getting that? Because that seems like it's been brought up before. So am I missing
I have to
something?
work with the town administrator on that one.
Pardon me?
I have to work through the town administrator on that one.
Any other questions on that issue? Okay, I guess, what time is it?
Mr. Chairman, before we start the public hearing, could I just ask the town planner, was there anything that we needed to sign for the Dave's Way vote that we took tonight?
Yes.
So maybe we could sign that and get it out of the way, because I think the applicant's here, or was here.
He was here.
Actually, it goes back to the selectmen because they have to file it with the town clerk before Monday. So it's going back to the selectmen's office.
Okay.
Okay.
We can give them a copy of the plan if you like.
We could sign it at the end of the meeting then?
In the meeting? Whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. All right, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you, Guy. So, the next item is opening a public hearing. It is 7:22. 5 articles to amend the zoning bylaws and/or zoning map on the warrant for the annual town meeting on May 22nd, 2017. The first article is dimensions and uses on lots that are split between 2 zoning districts.
You want to read this first? Yeah, read all this first.
There's a copy of the warrant there as well.
The warrant,
Warrant.
yeah.
There's a copy in the notebook as well.
Oh, it's in here, okay. So I guess I need to read the notice of the public hearing. Notice of continuation of planning board public hearing on amendments to the zoning bylaws scheduled for the May 22nd, 2017 annual town meeting from April 26, 2017 to May 10th, 2017. The planning board public hearing scheduled for April 26, 2017 to review and receive public input on 5 articles to amend the zoning bylaws and/or zoning map that will be on the warrant for the annual town meeting to be held at Shepherd Hill Regional High School at 68 Dudley Oxford Road, Dudley, Massachusetts, on May 22nd, 2017 at 7 p.m. has been continued to the planning board meeting to be held on Wednesday, May 10th, 2017 at 7:15 in the Dudley Municipal Complex, Room 321A, DMC Veterans Memorial Hall, 71 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass. 01571. The first article on the list is Article 25. Dimensions and use on lots that split between 2 zoning districts. Whoops. Okay, I'll read up until where I have a problem with the wording on this. Article 25, Planning Board amend zoning bylaws to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws, Section 2.01.02, District Delineation, second sentence, by changing the word transacted to transected. And by we're adding the minimum, the word minimum between the words by and area. If you go down and read the paragraph that starts when a lot is, I'm going to see if I can change the wording a little bit. It says, when a lot is transected by a zoning district boundary, the regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part by area of such lot, rather than saying the regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part by minimum area for the zoning district. That, I just can't get my head around that wording. I don't know if it means something to the board that I'm just not grasping, but the regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part by minimum area for the zoning district of such lot may also, at the option of the owner, be deemed to govern in a smaller part beyond such zoning district boundaries, but only to the extent not more than 30 linear feet in depth beyond such zoning district boundary, or take any other action thereof, relative thereof. Our original bylaw should be corrected from transacted to transected, but I'm not sure if to the larger part by minimum area is the right wording. Does it make sense to anybody else?
I understand what it means. I mean, it's going with the smaller of the two lots.
The way that I interpret,
Minimum size of to make it buildable, I'm guessing?
well, the way I interpret that is if you have a 2-acre parcel of land and half an acre is, say, residential 15.
Correct.
Right?
And an acre and a half is residential 30, and you have some rights in residential 15, but you have some rights in residential 30. What this is saying is that you can use those rights for a distance of 30 feet on either side of that boundary line. So if you wanted to use a res 30 right in the smaller portion, 30 feet over the line, that's permissible. If you wanted to use a res 15 regulation, 30 feet over the line into the res 30 district, that's permissible.
Okay, so that wording, the larger part by minimum area for the zoning district is okay. You want to change it that way. All right. It appeared to be,
Is that how you understand it, Don?
Yes.
I think previously, the way it was written was the larger parcel determined
right,
everything.
Correct.
And this
yes.
is giving the person who owns the land the option to go in either direction.
Okay, whatever, okay,
That's the way I interpret it, right?
Correct, because if say you had 1,000 acres, the way it was, it may not be buildable. Whereas doing this, you can,
so it gives the owner more
gives them
option.
a little bit more option, right?
But it's only for a distance of 30 feet in
Correct.
either
Right.
direction, so
Yeah.
it's not
They
like
could
you're,
make- they could make a
Right,
difference.
because the line's right there.
Right.
They definitely make a difference, though, that 30 feet could make a difference.
Right.
Sure.
How about you, Pam, is it clear?
Yeah, that makes sense, thank you,
Okay,
Diane.
and the wording is okay, the way it's,
It's, now that they've explained it to me, it sounds fine.
okay,
I wouldn't know how else to put it.
okay,
So,
all right.
Do you have
Madam
any
Chairman, just a suggestion, I don't know if between now and the 22nd, when we have the town meeting, whether or not you might want to, I don't know whether Dawn would be able to prepare it, but possibly a one-page sheet with an explanation as to the reason for each of these articles. Of course, the recreational marijuana is obvious, but an explanation sheet that maybe at the desk, at the town clerk's desk, when people come in to register, maybe a one-page summary or explanation may be helpful, that people could read along, because when you get up to present, you have to provide your report and recommendation to the town meeting before they can vote. That's a requirement of the statute. And as part of that report and recommendation, if there's a sort of a brief 3 or 4 line explanation
Certainly.
for each one of
It would
these.
be a report to the town meeting.
Yes, but what I'm saying is you basically,
Sure.
if you can pass out for people who may be having the same problem you had, Madam Chairman, understanding what this means, having a 4-line explanation where they can read along as it's being presented to town meeting, then they may have a better grasp when it comes to actually taking a vote or asking questions, so.
And maybe on this article, Don, you could actually put a little sketch or a little drawing showing a boundary line through a piece of property, and
Yeah, that's an even better idea, right?
I think people would get it.
Mhm.
Okay. Any further questions on this article? Any comments?
No, I'm set.
Okay. The next article, 26,
Madam Chairman, if I may, if there aren't any outstanding questions, what I would suggest you probably want to do is, after you discuss each article,
Okay.
if there's no input from the public on the article, then I would recommend that you have a motion to recommend a zoning
Recommend.
amendment.
Okay,
And then you can take a vote. Dawn can record that in the minutes, and that will be part of your report as well.
okay,
Because each time one of these articles comes up, there'll have to be a separate report by the planning board on Article 25, then there's a vote, then you move to Article 26, there's a report and a vote, same thing. So there'll have to be 5 separate instances for report to and then the report includes not only the notice of the public hearing, originally scheduled for the 26th, rescheduled to the 10th, and conducted, and the board voted to recommend by the following vote.
okay.
Okay, so you probably just want to have a motion to recommend adoption of the amendment to town meeting, and a second, and then a vote.
Okay. Now, we're voting, or making a motion to recommend.
To recommend
But we're-
Article 25
Okay.
to the town meeting, right, for
Okay.
adoption to
Will
town
it
meeting.
need further approval by the board? Do we have to, like, approve it too?
No, well, basically by recommending it, you're approving it.
Okay,
Because
Recommending
the
approval to the town meeting.
okay.
right, the
Sometimes we-
statutory requirement is that you hold your public hearing, you then, provide a report and recommendation.
Mhm.
So your vote tonight will be to recommend adoption of Article 25 to town meeting.
Okay. Just, you have more experience than I do. A lot of times we wait until just before the town meeting.
But if you don't have.
I think it's
quorum,
preferable to do it now.
I
Yeah.
think it's better to do it now.
So,
Maybe
okay,
we
so
won't.
we're
Do it
doing
now,
this.
we're trying to prepare
So
it.
we don't
we're trying
have to
prepare
repeat
our
this
Right.
before.
presentation.
If there's an outstanding question, for instance, of the 5 articles you have tonight, if you have an outstanding question on one, well, you can vote to recommend on 4, and then you can save the one for your meeting just before town
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
But we need to see if there's any public input on this one before we vote
Yeah,
on
I
it.
would
Right.
just recommend if there's anyone here who wants to speak on Article 25.
I'm Nelson Burlingame, the zoning officer. I agree with everything you're writing in here, and I get what you're saying, and I get the either or, and I'm happy with that. But I just want clarification, because I'm gonna end up having to make the decision if one is right on the border. I get the 30 feet and beyond, you can claim one side or the other. But does that count the frontage like on both lots in the area? I'm not quite sure about that, how that works. And I think, Guy, we had talked about it, but I just, in other words, say it was 15 and 30, and you had, I don't know, say you had 15 and 15. But the frontage, you didn't have the frontage in either one. But together you had the frontage enough to make both of them. Is that how this is gonna work? I'm not, this is kinda unique.
Well, if your frontage, the way I would interpret it is if the boundary line crosses the frontage, you could use 30 feet more frontage on either
Right.
side.
Yeah.
But if you don't have enough you have to have enough frontage for it to be a lot, to be considered to use
You think it's the 30 feet?
30 feet on either
Is
side.
that what we actually want? You know?
Otherwise, we would be writing a frontage waiver.
Okay.
I think,
That's fine by me, it's just, you know.
I think too that if it's transacted like it says, if it goes, let's say lot requirement is that the lot has to be 120 feet deep to be able to be a conforming lot for a district. The zone line runs through at 70 feet, and you have a setback for the district that requires 15-foot rear yard. you can go across that zone line only 30 feet. You can't go across all the way back to 15 feet. Is that, I don't know if that made anything any clearer or made it worse, but
I guess the next question is like say you were res 15, res 30, say the res 15, you had 10,000 square feet and you added 30 feet beyond and you couldn't make the 15,000, that means that's non-buildable too?
unless it's grandfathered under the other provision in the next article. If it's grandfathered, it might be buildable, depends on the circumstances.
If it's pre-existing non-conforming, it was never built on,
Right.
but it wouldn't be by right.
Right.
One other thing, Madam Chairman, just with respect to the report or the summary that we provide, it might be helpful. I'm just curious because I'm wondering whether this proposed change, Nelson, is because of an issue you had presented to you?
Yes, yes.
And then you spoke with Don about trying to refine the language a bit to make it more clear? Okay.
And I do think it makes it more clear and everything. It's just the other question that I asked. I think I would have them question whether he changes this or not, maybe, you know? I kind of want to clear it up in my own mind. Well, the whole group's there, I guess, is what I'm trying to do. So when I make a decision, it goes along with what the intent was.
Yeah, mhm.
Any other input? Okay, would someone like to make a motion to recommend accepting Article 25, amend zoning bylaw,
I would say approving rather than accepting. And approve it.
recommend to approve bylaw section 20102.
I think we can just do it by article number.
Article 25.
25.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Article 25 to the town meeting for May 22nd, is it?
That you recommend approval of Article 25 to the town meeting.
Yeah, okay.
As written?
As written?
Yes. That completes the motion.
As written, okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any objections? Unanimous. Article 26, non-conforming lots and use issues. Let's see. Article 26, planning board amend zoning bylaws to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw, section 20401, exceptions as follows. Am I required to read the whole thing because it's an open meeting, Don?
Actually, Madam Chairman, what I first suggest is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on Article 26? If not, then I think you can just, you can accept a motion to just waive the reading. You have it, we all have warrants in front of us. If there's no one here who wishes to be heard on it, then you can just refer to your warrant for the language of the full article without the necessity to read the whole item. And then you can hear Don make his recommendation to you in support of this.
Don, your comments? I've read
Okay.
this.
The reason we did this, and again, I worked with Nelson on this one as well, the reason we did this article was because a few things. There was a section, the first sentence was not very clear. What it amounts to is that a lot doesn't become non-conforming by a taking, for, say, from the state for a highway or something like that, or taking to the town for a roadway. That kind of thing may make a lot non-conforming in terms of size or frontage, but it doesn't make it non-conforming in the traditional sense because it was conforming when the land was taken. So that doesn't change. That's why we put the two commas in there, to separate that thought so that it was clear that that's what we intended. That if there was a public taking, that it wouldn't make a lot non-conforming. That's what we think it was supposed to say, that's what it should say. So we made that a little bit clearer. The second one, the issue is about grandfathering 5,000 square foot lots, wasn't even addressed in the zoning bylaw. Nelson and I thought that should be inserted so it's clear what we have to do. Based on that paragraph is based on the statute and case law. It spells it right out. The amendment to the third paragraph it's the second in the text right now. And into that one states that any lot created after, was it July 1st and June 1st,
January 1st.
1976, which includes anything created now, obviously. Up to 3 lots can be grandfathered separately for 5 years and built upon separately, but, well, actually, any lot that is created lawfully can be built upon for 5 years if the zoning changes. But they can be combined. They can be separate, rather, I'm sorry. They can be separate, and you can do that for up to 3 lots in a row. 4th lot after that would stand on its own. For a period of 5 years. After that, you become non-conforming and have to be combined. They can stand alone, in other words, for 5 years. But after the 5-year period, if they're not conforming, they have to be combined to become conforming.
So for the first, basically, if I'm getting this right, for the first 5 years, each individual lot is good. And after that 5 years, they'd have to be brought together as one to be conforming?
Say, for example, you have it's at least 7,500 square feet, too. It's grandfathered for. So let's say that you have a so you have an R10 district, 10,000 square foot lots. Changes to an R30 district. The 4 lots, they can be built separately for 5 years as an R10 district. But after 3 years, 5 years rather, you have to combine them for building purposes into one 30,000 square foot lot. The zone change from R10 to R30.
Okay, basically I think that's what I was
You
getting
can't
at,
combine more than
correct?
3. You can't do that for more than 3 in a row. That's the way the statute reads.
So Don, I have one question on this, because the 5 years is what's throwing me, because on your section 3 here, it says, a period of 5 years from its effective date or 5 years after January 1st, 1976. Given the fact that we're in 2017, there's no 5-year.
We can take that out of this if you want. That's from the statute. That's why it's there. It's in
Okay.
the original bylaw, too.
I think you're probably modeling this after the language in 48,
Section
section 6, right?
Section 6, that's right, yes.
And so this actually tracks, what we're doing is incorporating the zoning bylaw, the language that's in the statute
Oh, okay.
governing non-conforming, and the statute does refer to 1976. So while that might seem outdated, in order to have this language track the specific language of the statute that allows this protection, I would actually recommend that we probably keep it there, just so it is consistent.
The reason I kept it there is because it was in the bylaw as it stands right now, too, so rather than just amending the whole thing.
Okay. So when, through the chair to town council, when does this other 5-year period take effect? Does that take effect after a zoning change? You have a 5-year period for this to be in play, or, because it says,
Yes, because if you read, if you look over to the, well, I don't know if you have the warrant there. in
Yep.
front of you? And you look over to the page that has the underline and the strike through,
yep,
you'll see that it reads, if you drop down below the underlined section, the sentence beginning on the left-hand column, any increase in lot area, frontage, yard requirements shall not apply for, and then it drops down now to a period of 5 years from its effective date. So the effective date of any increase is the date of adoption by town meeting.
okay.
And so, for 5 years, 5 years from the effective date of 5 years after January 176. I mean, frankly, the January 176 reference is really not relevant. but it's more relevant that if we adopt an increase at this next town meeting, which we're not doing now, but if we were, the lots would be essentially grandfathered from that increase for 5 years going forward.
Any questions from the audience? Any input?
There was this.
All set?
What, I'll say this, all he's doing is making it clearer, like town council said, and it's really in the bylaw, and the only case that would matter is like you said, if you would change something later on, it would change the zoning, you'd have that 5-year period for zoning purposes. Makes
Lots to be
sense.
grandfathered separately for 5 years, essentially.
Yeah.
After that, they would have to be combined. And that exemption only refers to 3 lots, no more than 3 lots in a row. And the last amendment is take the last sentence out that's there right now, because it doesn't make any sense. We didn't think it made any sense, because essentially it says conforming lots are conforming. That- Right? That's the way I read it.
Yeah.
And I don't see why we need that. It's a given.
You're talking about the any legally conforming use, structure, and land area is hereby exempt from conforming to the density requirements stated herein. It's a given.
No, that's why we didn't
It's
think there was
good.
any need for it.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board?
I'm all set.
Questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to recommend the approval of Article 26, non-conforming lots and use issues?
I'll make that motion to accept that, Article 26 as amended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Unanimously approved. Okay, the next one is Article 27. Allow existing buildings on small lots to expand and be allowed closer to setbacks by special permit. Let's see. Is this an amendment or an addition, Don?
Well, I guess it's both.
It's an addition.
It's adding an additional paragraph. It's amending
Okay,
the entire bylaw in its entirety, but it is, in that sense, it's an additional paragraph, that's right.
okay. The additional paragraph, buildings including accessory buildings in existence at the time of the adoption of this section of this bylaw that are in violation of the minimum front, side, or rear yards required by this bylaw may be added to, provided the increase in the area of the footprint of the said buildings is not greater than 30% of the existing footprint area currently in use, pursuant to a special permit granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals in accordance with Section 50104, decision criteria special permits of this bylaw, or take any action relative thereof. Any questions of the audience? Input of,
That bylaw, I worked with him on it, and the reason we did it is I really wanted it too, because we have a lot of small lots. We have some of them like on the lakes and stuff that's existing, and a lot of people want to do a couple things. And we gave it some thought, and we put accessory buildings we added too, because if people want sheds and stuff. And we also kept it by special permit, so that there is a group of people that decided, but CBA's has a hard time to be able to give it and give a variance with it. By doing it this way in the special permit, we're trying to get more away from the variance, so it's what we hope is to plead, give more options to people on the smaller lots to be able to do those couple of things.
Special permit criteria that refers to basically says that, subject to a finding, that the increase is no more detrimental to the area than the existing use. Essentially, that's what it reads.
Right now, you
If the
gotta
zoning
do
board
the,
can do that finding, then they can pass it as a special permit to allow an extension.
Right now, you gotta use, soil, shape, and topography, and that can be tough at times. And this'll make it a lot more cut and dry that what they're doing is okay. And it'll be case by case. But, at least it gives them the option to be able to do it. 'Cause right now, it's very tough for them to do it. I hate to put the ZBA in that position, and I do believe this will help a lot.
And the other thing, Madam Chairman, just, this language is helpful because you do, as Nelson and Don have mentioned, you do tie this to a special permit procedure. Right now, the statute, in the absence of language of this sort, a party could come in and seek what's called a 48 Section 6 special finding. And the standard there is whether the increase is not substantially more detrimental than the existing nonconformity. But not substantially more detrimental is a little nebulous. But if here, what we're doing is we're tying to a special permit procedure, which is actually is more specific in terms of the criteria that someone needs to establish. So what this does is it bridges the gap between, as Nelson mentioned, instead of having to go in for a dimensional variance and meet the 4 strict criteria, we come in under the a little more relaxed standard of special permit, but that is still better than the language of the statute, not substantially more detrimental. So,
And we are
Pretty
given,
much.
we are given it a 30% maximum increase, too.
right, yes.
So it's given it a
That's also
definition.
another important
Okay.
factor, because the statute doesn't have a percentage limit as far as that test of not substantially more detrimental. So this is fixing how much someone can increase it, and then tying it to special permit.
Our intent was, for example, to allow somebody to add a bedroom in the existing house. But that would be, likely be in that area, 30%.
Questions from the audience? Board? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to recommend approval of Article 17?
27?
27.
What did I say, 17?
17.
27.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve Article 27 as written.
I'll second.
Actually, if that could be worded, Mr. Horn, recommend approval of Article 27. as written.
Recommend approval of Article 27 as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay, Article 23, establish a temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana.
This is an article sponsored by the selectmen. Reason being is the state, as I understand it, the state regulations are subject to some change over the next year or so. This gives us time to allow the state to get their regulations down, and for the when final word comes down, we're ready. Any other?
Comment? You have a comment?
The only comment I have is, I know that Dawn has modeled this after other moratoria that have been adopted in other communities and which have already been approved by the Attorney General's office. So this gives us the opportunity to put a freeze on this until the State Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Public Health develop the regulations that have to go with the referendum question that was adopted. So this is in a form that has already been approved by the Attorney General's office.
We both worked on this.
Mhm.
Yeah, we both worked on this.
Don
Okay.
kept an eye on me, so
He did the language, and I checked the dates. That's what it comes down to.
Comments on this article from the audience? Or members of the board?
Has there been any interest in the town? Has anybody approached the town?
Well, it's not that anybody approached the town, but the ballot measure passed by a little, I think it's like 52 or 54% in favor and the rest against. So the town as a whole voted, at the ballot measure, voted in favor of it. but we just want to make sure that we get everything in line before state regulations take effect.
No further questions. Do we have a motion to recommend approval of Article 23, establish a temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, Article 35, a citizen's petition to amend the zoning map by changing approximately 30 acres of assessed parcel 212-13, which is further described as 0 Oxford Avenue and is located westerly of Oxford Avenue and southerly of Dudley Oxford Town Line, from the current single-family residential district to the industrial or Industry 43 district. Anyone want to come forward?
Sure. Good evening, my name is Stephen Christie from Sustainable Energy Professionals. I'm representing the respondents tonight. Answering any questions you have on the petition put forward.
We need him to sign in.
Sir, could you speak into the microphone also and sign in, please?
Oh, that's fine. Oops.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your name and your affiliation, please?
So my name is Stephen Christie. I'm with Sustainable Energy Professionals, which is located in Plainville, Massachusetts. I'm representing the O'Connors, who are the current property owners at the subject parcel that you read in the article. I'm here to clarify and any comments you might have on the current proposal. The current proposal, as drawn here, this is the existing zoning. This would be the proposed zoning map after the fact, approximately. I also wanted to just pass out a couple things.
Okay.
Better clarification of what the existing zoning is, because the map kind of hides the parcel lines. It doesn't show you the underlying parcel lines, so I felt that this exhibit along with the area would show you what's going on there.
Thank you.
Yes, please. For the record. Yeah.
As you can see by the smaller map I've just handed out, we're looking to change approximately this 30 acres from Res 30 to Industrial 43 to allow for a large-scale solar development. That would be the end, the purpose of the zoning change. Okay, that's the reason. Currently, under your zoning bylaw, you do not allow large-scale solar developments in any district but Industrial 43.
Industrial 130 as well.
What's that?
Industrial 130 too.
Industrial 130. Okay.
We have two.
Currently, you'll see that the parcel is on both sides, has limited industrial 87, and throughout the rear portion is all limited industrial. And if you flip to the second page, you'll see an existing gravel operation that is actually right up to the subject parcel. So with that existing gravel operation and the limited industrial already located here in the corner, I thought it was a harmonious fit, and I did not think we were subject to any sort of spot zoning with the way things came together in this certain particular petition.
I'm sorry, could you just, it might be helpful if you can just hold that closer to you. Yes. Could you just repeat the statement you just made regarding spot zoning?
I do not believe this creates a spot zoning issue due to the fact of the size of the parcel, as well as the fact that there's an existing gravel operation that goes right up to the parcel in an existing limited industrial zone, along with the fact that there is limited industrial already on Oxford next to the proposed frontage for this project. So basically surrounded on 3 sides, including the town of Oxford, is all industrial parcels of some sort. The only thing that would remain residential is the residential out on the main road of Oxford Avenue.
You indicate what the dimensions are that you're using along Oxford Avenue?
Right,
Setbacks from the roadway?
yes, so topographically, you'll see on the first map that I gave you, due to the severe contours in the residential zone, there's almost a natural buffer built in from the residential parcels to where it actually tables off at the top of the hill and is usable for what we're talking about. And so from the center line of Oxford Avenue, it would be roughly 550 feet to the first panel or where we would start clearing. So it's a really out of sight, out of mind situation for the development we're talking about, as well as it would be 250 feet from the existing residential lot to basically the first panel or the industrial area. So, I mean, you've got a natural built-in buffer for any of the residential homes here to this project, which I think also supports the zone change. Is that what you were looking for, Don?
The dimensions that said how far back your district goes from,
The district currently
Yeah.
is proposed at almost
Proposed district.
400 feet.
400 feet, okay.
400 feet from the center line of Oxford Avenue, and roughly, the required 200 feet of frontage off the existing limited industrial area headed south.
Okay. We know what you want to do with it, but
Right.
how do we guarantee that that'll happen?
Well,
There's a lot of other things that are allowed in that district, restaurants and gas stations and,
or expansion of the existing gravel operation.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's really, regardless of this project, the zone change would be harmonious to what's going on in the neighboring parcels. And the only usable area for the parcel is 550 feet up on top of the hill. So regardless of whether it's solar or some other commercial use, it's going to have the built-in screening just due to the topographic nature of this particular parcel.
Is there a lot of ledge leading into
It's
there?
bony. It's bony, which means there's rock outcroppings. It's not so much ledge, but there are outcroppings and what have you there. I haven't got a geotechnical survey done yet, so I can't tell you it's all ledge, but I will tell you that it's predominantly dry. There is a pocket of wetland here or there, so there must be some decent draining soils up there for that to happen.
Attorney Brackett,
Yes.
we have you here to determine whether or not this is considered spot zoning. Can you help us with that?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I just have one question of the speaker, Mr. Christie, right? What's the life expectancy of the solar farm installation?
So the solar panels the contract is usually 20 years initial term with 2 5-year extensions at the owner of the system's discretion. So it's a minimum of, it can be a minimum of 20. I will tell you that the panel life is warranted to 25, so I almost expect all of these systems to go at least 25 because that's when the warranty on the panel lasts. So it would make sense for whoever the owner is to extend that first extension.
Well, Madam Chairman, Don and I have discussed this issue of spot zoning. I understand that Don's also been kind enough to provide us with some information regarding the history of the parcel. if I understand correctly, that the proponent of this zoning change had previously sought to rezone this property to residential use? Am I correct in that, Don?
That's correct.
From your review?
Yes.
And the area that you're proposing for the solar farm, has it been determined that that's not susceptible for residential use pursuant to the previous rezoning at this property owner's request?
Correct. So the solar project only needs an access way, okay, to get to the site, which is visited 2 to 3 times a year after it's built. A subdivision roadway and the minimum grade standards of a subdivision roadway and the cost associated with getting to those minimum standards, along with the location, if you look at page 2 of the gravel pit and the blasting operation, really does not lend itself to a residential development that would be financially viable.
Madam Chairman, let me just give you a brief summary of some of the information that we have. First, I'll start off kind of a general view regarding some materials I have regarding spot zoning in general, and then I'll mention some of the cases in Massachusetts. There's basically the concept behind spot zoning is singling out a small parcel of land for a use classification totally different from that of the surrounding area. Now, what's interesting about this property, as Don and I discussed, is that when this was changed to residential use, that actually was a change that made it much different from the surrounding area, because as has just been presented, you've got the abutting industrial district in Oxford, you've got the light industrial 87 that butts up against this property. My understanding is that the reason it was changed to residential was because we were eliminating the residential use from the industrial zone in the table of use regulations. So rather than having a bunch of non-conforming residential lots in an industrial zone, it was changed to a residential zone. So when you look at it, in some respects, looking back to the decision-making process some years ago, that would seem to make some sense. But so as far as the multiple tests that are given for spot zoning, this is not one of the classic examples where you try to take a piece of property in the middle of a residential zone and you want to change it to commercial because you want to put in a fast food restaurant, or you want to put in a convenience store or a gas station in a convenience store, something like that. That would be clearly a spot zoning issue subject to challenge and invalidation. So you look to the compatibility of this proposed zoning use to the zoning in the surrounding parcels. And as Don and I discussed, the standard for a reviewing court, but also the standard for this board in making a determination, each case is based on its own factual scenario. So some of the elements that have been used sort of on a broad-based national scale, cases from around the country, are the size of the parcel, the rezoning of this in relationship to the town's comprehensive plan or master plan. Now, Don mentioned, I think the last time your master plan was updated was 2000?
2000. At the time, it indicated that it looks like from the maps that was industrial 130 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the master plan recommended that it go to LI 43, which apparently it did in 2001 or 2002.
Right.
The change to the residential district was in 2005.
So when you look at something like this, what you normally would try to do if someone was rezoning a piece of property, you try to figure out, well, what has the planning board done in terms of a master plan? What does the planning board see as sort of the future going forward as far as zoning a parcel? So is this proposal tonight, is that consistent with your master plan, or does it seem to be, a diversion from what you've done? And I understand, that the master plan is something you try to fine-tune. In my experience, I've seen that sometimes you fine-tune a master plan based upon the experience of building permits, what's actually being built out there, Is the property being used for what it's zoned for? Is there a change in priorities? I know Sean and I were talking earlier about some communities are looking to refocus more commercial, industrial, because it broadens the tax base and it doesn't place as much of a burden as residential properties does on your tax stream, especially given, your Prop 2.5 limitations. So when you're looking at these elements, the question is this rezoning tied to a legitimate purpose, a comprehensive plan? Does it conform to the comprehensive plan? And does it result in an inequality in treatment of similarly situated lands? Technically, once again, this is sort of a broad-based national article written by an attorney in Chicago for a presentation, but when we bring this down specifically to Massachusetts law, number one, Chapter 40, Section 4 says that a zoning bylaw or a zoning ordinance in a city, that there's supposed to be uniformity among districts. So that's really a statutory responsibility when you're looking at how you're assessing districts and how you're changing property from one zoning district to another. The two cases that have been cited, there's a long-standing case from 1941 by the Supreme Judicial Court, which is the highest court of the state, the 7 judges of the Supreme Judicial Court. And there they say the standards are, you look at the public health, safety, morals, welfare. Are those going to be promoted by this zoning change? Mere economic gain, once again, this is dating back to 1941, mere economic gain is not sufficient cause. So, I understand the on-site practical difficulties on the property. If it can't be developed for residential use, well then, frankly, from where I sit, it raises a question about why it was rezoned all those years ago to residential use, because it wasn't practical then. It's not practical today. It obviously wasn't practical then, but we can't revisit that. The other issue, this most recent case, 2014 from the land court, but the land court judges deal with zoning and land use issues every day. There, the town of Swampscott wanted to rezone a parcel of land solely to raise the maximum revenue for the town. This wasn't even a profit-making enterprise. This is the town trying to raise revenue for a piece of town property by rezoning it. And there, the land court determined, based on a challenge, obviously someone wasn't happy with that proposal, the land court said that is not an allowable public purpose sufficient to avoid a spot zoning argument. So the balancing here that the court says, on the one hand, you weigh the economic benefit to the owner, and I can understand the owner has a chance to maximize the use of the property by virtue of this project, and the project itself may bring in payment in lieu of taxes, payments to the town over the 20, 25, 30 years of the life of the project. So there is some potential income stream to the town. But then you have to weigh the economic benefit to the owner versus the benefit to the general public. And what we normally do is we wait until we have the public hearing. We hear not only from the proponent, we determine if there's any opposition. I don't know if there's any opposition here tonight. The fact that there's no opposition here tonight doesn't mean there won't be opposition at town meeting. I'm not going to go out and suggest to people to go to town meeting and oppose it. It's just that people don't have to come here. If they show up at town meeting and the question's raised, this needs a 2/3 vote. So you can have opposition at town meeting who may be asking the same question. Is this spot zoning or not? Now, normally, we put the burden on the applicant to say, why isn't this spot zoning? Number one, on the one side, is it consistent with some of the bordering areas? The answer, frankly, is yes. There are some other bordering industrial properties. Does the town gain any benefit from this? I don't know. I haven't heard of any benefit specifically to the town or any consistency with the comprehensive or master plan, but it's certainly going to benefit the property owner because they're now going to be able to dispose of the property probably through a lease. I don't know, is this going to be a lease arrangement or outright
Right.
sale?
And if I may interrupt, you know, it was odd to me when I reviewed your master plan that as a green community, there wasn't a renewable energy component in your master plan. And you would think that someone who is a green community and has, I believe, achieved, right, green community status, that would have been part of the master plan, or I would have referenced it. The only benefit I saw referenced in the comprehensive plan was that should something like this happen, that a significant buffer be put in between the residential property and the industrial, which I tried to demonstrate with over 500 feet, you know, from the center line, as well as over 250 feet from the existing residential homes, and that's the closest home. So I agree with your sentiment that I did not have a lot to go on with the master plan, but then I found the master plan incomplete with its outward dealings that the town is already a green community, and there should have been some reference in the master plan to how that was all being achieved.
Right. No, and I can understand that an applicant coming forward, realizing the concern of spot zoning, one of the first things they're going to do in preparation, their due diligence to come before you, is to try to look to the master plan, see how the town has evaluated these kinds of uses. I mean, Chapter 40A, the zoning statute, Section 3, does provide for a certain protection for solar uses. We have chosen to designate these. We've moved from the previous districts where they were allowed. We've now chosen to place them in the two industrial districts, as Don was saying. I think we're now in Industrial 43 and Industrial 130.
Yes, and the landfill as well.
Right. So, but there is a statutory, almost an encouragement for cities and towns in terms of making sure you can't prohibit them completely. They don't have the same protection as a religious or educational use. Those can go in any zone, but they do have a certain preferred status under 48 Section 3. So what I'm trying to do is provide you with a balancing. This isn't, as I said, this isn't one of the purely spot zoning situations where you're trying to change a parcel, as I've used as an example before, a parcel in the middle of a residential zone to provide a commercial use. There are no other abutting commercially zoned properties to that parcel. So that, frankly, and you know, I would most likely recommend against it. Here you have sort of a little bit of each. You have an economic benefit to the property owner, which the Massachusetts courts say that shouldn't be the sole determining factor. But you have a use that's going in that, frankly, as a solar use, frankly, somewhat of a passive use. It's going to be abutting light industrial in Oxford, light industrial with the sand and gravel removal. I mean, the sand and gravel operations on any given day is probably making more noise than a solar installation. So when you think about the compatibility of these uses, that's something to take into consideration. And I would just suggest, Madam Chairman, I know we voted to recommend approval on the other four items. If you believe that the board needs further time to consider this, you want a further report from me, a memorandum providing with additional information, you always have the option to continue your public hearing on this from tonight right on up until the night of town meeting, when you can meet beforehand to take your vote to consider whether you're going to recommend in favor or recommend against the proposed zone change. So why don't I stop there and see if you have any questions, or the applicant or your representative, Mr. Christie, has any questions of me.
John?
There's a couple of questions. Were you before the planning board in sort of a workshop format a few weeks back? You said you were looking at the actual area of the you were thinking of rezoning. There need to be a survey done. Has that been done?
The survey is not completed, no.
Okay.
No, but we you know, the actual parameters of the zone change can be nailed down.
Yeah, but it's the 30 acres is pretty close to the actual area, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And let's say that if it were rezoned, obviously you could put all kinds of other uses in that district that maybe not be as compatible with the area, for example. Is the use you're proposing, is there some way you could possibly do it? I'll defer this to town council for a little bit of his opinion as well. Could you possibly put a D restriction on it, of some kind that you wouldn't
So what,
use it for certain?
the uses, are you talking about gas station and restaurant and
Oh,
things like
yeah,
that?
I mean, it's just
So-
some of them, I could pull out the list, but
Right, so those uses, based on what I'm seeing and what I'm getting as feedback from a survey and wetland scientists and what have you, I don't, the traffic count does not exist on this road for retail or a gas station or any sort of establishment like that. I've developed CVS, Walgreens, and numerous shopping centers in my day, and this is not the place for any of that. You have an existing maintenance garage here that fixes cars, and you have one residential home and a spattering of other residential homes. And down further in Oxford, you have some large industrial warehouse buildings, right, and some properties for sale. I don't see a threat unless somebody's on a mission for a failed business to go into a restaurant or even have the area to do that. That's my personal opinion. Does it open it up? Sure. But we are only asking for the minimum frontage of 200 feet there or whatever we need at the front is currently. So I don't think you have a lot of worries for these other uses that may be brought in due to this zone change. The predominant good area on this parcel is up in here, and there is, without a doubt, a large industrial a large wooded buffer that will remain between the residential area and this project. And for that reason, and the reasons of all the abutting industrial lands, I thought this was worth going down this road for a zone change. If you look at my past record for projects, I don't think but one of my projects you can actually see from the street. I'm a big fan of out of sight, out of mind. Put these systems in a place that is not obtrusive visually to anybody and just quietly generates power that we all use. So that was another reason that was attractive to me for coming before you guys and petitioning for the change.
Questions of audience? Questions of the board?
Yes, Mr. Christie it was? How did you come about making this proposal for the zoning change via citizens petition? Is this something you've done in the past, or?
Well, my background is in civil engineering, so I've been permitting things for over 17 years, all throughout the state of Massachusetts, New York, and New England. So the process itself is a little different in every place, but the citizens petition was performed and the signatures were gotten by the O'Connors. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, just for your information, under 48.5, a zoning amendment can be proposed by a property owner. It can be proposed by the planning board. It can be presented by a citizen's petition with 10 signatories to it. So any one of those, and the procedure normally is, once it's presented to the selectmen then refer it back to you for the public hearing. Even if you want to propose a zoning amendment, it first has to go to the selectmen, they refer it back to you for public hearing, just as you're having tonight. So the property owner does have a right under 48.5 to submit a request for a zone change.
I think it's 10 petitioners for a regular town meeting.
It's a,
Regularly scheduled town meeting. If it were a special town meeting, we need 100 signatures.
Actually, special is 200 signatures
200,
under
okay.
39, section 10.
200.
But in the case of an applicant for a zoning amendment, 48.5 specifically suggests that you can file it as a zoning amendment in that fashion. So.
Exactly.
Pam, do you have any questions? Sean?
Just one more question. You said the closest array will be 250 feet buffer from the their existing home or the new home?
So if you look at the lot on the front page there, if I took a measurement off the corner of that lot out to where the land starts to, you know, through that rough terrain there, and it was 250 feet. So roughly 250 feet from that residential back property.
And that's pretty heavily wooded.
It's
so.
really heavily wooded, yeah.
That was it.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Does the board want to make decision, or do you want to postpone it until May 22nd meeting? Do you need more time to analyze it and think about it? You're okay?
I'm okay with it.
How about you, Guy? Do you-
I'm okay with
What else what would we be looking for? You know, what
I don't-
else?
Well, it's new, so I don't know if you want to think about it or have more. Okay.
The only questions I had were, I mean, if I was to need more time, is, you know, you're looking at the aerial photo of the gravel operation that's up there. I mean, they're already there.
Right.
It is a small, I mean, the other area is staying Res 30, and we're only opening up, we're adding to the other, correct? The LI 87 that's already there?
The LI 87, right, will now abut the new industrial 43 district.
It will be going to a 43, right? No, it'll be going to 87, sorry. No, 43. I don't see a problem with it, personally.
Madam Chairman, if I can just, maybe if I can offer a recommendation, not to postpone the matter, but in addition to what I presented to you tonight, I understand that Don Johnson told me that when, and I don't know how many of the members attended the selectmen's meeting when they reviewed the warrant, but I think, Don, you mentioned to me the issue of spot zoning came up at the selectmen's meeting as well. What I would recommend, why don't I prepare a short memorandum to you to try to highlight these issues, because I have to honestly say, I think when we look at the broader-based standards that I explained to you before versus the state decision, the case law of Massachusetts, this is one of those issues that could come down either way on the question of spot zoning. So I just want to be able to provide you with that full information before you take your vote, because I'm obviously, I'm assuming I'm going to be asked that question on the floor of town meeting. And what I probably want to do is address it to you beforehand. Any one of you can, if you have questions based on the memorandum, you can actually send me an individual email, as long as you don't copy the other members, so we don't have an open meeting law issue. And then I can provide sort of a consolidated response based on questions I received to follow up with my initial memo. And I can probably get that out to you, early next week, so you have at least a week to review it before the meeting on the 22nd. But what I guess what I'm suggesting is, maybe if you want to postpone your vote on it tonight, you can read the memorandum, and that way, I don't want to put you in a position where, if there are arguments made on the floor of town meeting in addition to what we've heard tonight, that if I'm going to be called upon to request spot zoning, be very candid with you, in an open public meeting, I don't want to be giving a spot zoning decision after you've already taken a vote to recommend approval of the warrant article. I want to be able to give you that full information before you take your vote. And as I said, you can be meeting as you have done before, at 6 or 6:30 on the evening of town meeting, and I've had that happen many times over the years where planning board, as long as you started your meeting, as you have originally the 26th tonight, you can continue it right up until the evening of town meeting. But I will certainly get you my memorandum to you early next week for your review, and I can respond to any questions you have.
That would be appreciated.
Okay, well then, I would suggest we go with your recommendation and postpone, continue
Public hearing.
the public hearing on that Article 35. That's the proper one. Yes.
Do we need to make a motion on that?
Yes, I would recommend, that way you don't actually have to do no new notice. you can just take a motion to continue the public hearing, and if you want to do it on the evening of town meeting,
Yep.
if you want to fix a time to say 6 PM, I think
Okay.
town meeting starts at 7. I know you're usually meeting at the same time the selectmen are meeting,
Right.
going over the warrant, so if you want to just a motion to continue the public hearing to 6 PM on May 22nd.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing, specifically for Article 35, until the night of the town meeting, May 22nd at 6 PM. That's okay? 6 PM?
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Couple questions.
Sure.
That means the other four articles, the hearing's concluded for those, and you want to base your report on the motions you've already made, is that correct?
Correct.
And we won't do the report, and the report will say that we've kept this portion open and we'll be reporting at town meeting floor. Okay?
Okay.
That sounds fine. And
Sean,
Mr.
you-
Christie, before you leave, if I may get your card, just in case I have any follow-up questions for you between now and next week?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
One thing I'd suggest is that, I don't know if it's an amendment on town meeting floor, but if it were to go through, I think we want to have some specific dimensions. I mean, I know you mentioned,
That's fine.
but some specific dimensions from
That's fine.
the lot corner, from center line of Oxford Road, whatever it may be, Oxford Avenue, whatever it may be.
They'll be as close
Some
as I can
measurable
get them.
points, and,
Yeah.
a surveyor can find the back corner of this lot, for example, but without some direction, the surveyor can't find the point where this line turns to the south.
Wait, what?
This line, see, extending from westerly and it extends southerly,
Yep,
some dimensions of where,
yeah,
how we, surveyor could find that on the ground, that's all.
that's fine. I can supply you with a dimensional plan for that. I'll email it to you, Don, if that's all right. Or
Me?
however you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
We still didn't do a roll call on that, did
Madam
we?
Chairman, you were about to ask me a question also.
Sorry?
You were about to ask me a question.
No.
I think she was supposed to.
I think we should, think we should reiterate that motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing regarding zoning article number 35 until, to a Monday night, May 22nd meeting at 6 PM prior to the annual, or biannual town meeting.
That'll be in that building, right?
Yes, at the Shepherd Hill High School.
Yes, okay.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on, unfinished and old business. This is not part of the public hearing. Do I close the, since it's
No,
continued?
We don't close
Okay,
it until we're there.
all right. Planner's plate, Don?
Well, I've been involved pretty much with this sort of thing for the past couple of weeks. I've been through what the schedule is for economic development, those other things that we've been looking at. That was obviously had a lot going on with Dave's Way as well. Looking to begin working on that economic development project with CMRPC, with the EDC, with the selectmen, with this board, and I think we'll have a good direction to go through at the end of the year. Our economic development
Madam
plan.
Chairman? Night, Don.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.
I don't have a written report this time because it's, you know,
Can't
the
hear ya.
schedule is pretty tight. I don't have a written report. I can get that to you shortly.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are there any vouchers that need to be signed?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
There's 4, actually.
Okay. And we also need to sign the other. Okay, while we're waiting to get signature papers, comments from the planning board?
I have none.
All set. Comments from the audience? Guess not. Okay, other business, pre-application meeting with Carl Guerin on behalf of Verizon Wireless for the purpose of discussing a new personal wireless service facility on the northwest corner of West Main Street and Hall Road.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board, and Mr. Johnson. My name is Carl Gehring. I've got my own easel that works a little better with my plans. I'm joined by Jonathan McNeil, down the takes right there, represents the project on real estate. And we, under section, Article 11, I don't know when the last time you looked at that was. I know I was here about 10 years ago for a co-location on that tower on Blackmere Road. I think it's a guide tower. I don't know if you recognize me or if any of you were on the board at that time. But that was the last time I was in Dudley, and I know it's the article regarding wireless is not one that's commonly used on a daily basis. But there is a provision that requires pre-application conference as well as meeting with the building inspector and the planner. So Mr. Burlingame and Mr. Johnson and I already met a few weeks ago to kind of go over what we're doing. Now, can you hear me, Fred? Okay. Being a pre-app, is it necessary that I get this all on the record? So I'm going to hold this up here because I tried to work with Fred earlier on my own. I have my own tie-clip wireless mic, being a wireless guy, but I had some technical difficulties. We couldn't get it going. So basically, you would think we're done building towers, right? That there should be enough of those. Well, however, there's actually going to be needing more. You know, we're going to need more as time goes on. I've been doing this for 21 years, and after about 5 years in the business, people said you're going to be out of a job in a few years. There's going to be plenty of towers. It's actually the exact opposite with 4G and now 5G on the horizon. We need more sites closer together. You may be a Verizon Wireless customer and think, or say, well, I get service now out there. What's the problem? The problem is that any service coming into this area of Dudley, which is over on Hall Road and West Main down across the street from the courthouse, that is all coverage that's coming in from surrounding sites, like that one on Blackmere Road that I mentioned and the site in Webster. Those sites are straining to bring service in, and the problem is the more people that get on the line, the more network traffic, it shrinks the footprint down and people start dropping calls. So we find in high traffic areas, high volume commercial areas, even busy intersections and so forth, where there's problems where folks are dropping calls. So this site will be providing both primary coverage as well as that what we call capacity, where it's relieving the overload that's being experienced on these surrounding cell sites because they're simply too far away to get the job done for where we want to be. So Mr. McNeil was given the assignment to go try to find an existing tower. We always try to look for an existing one first. We couldn't find one, so he found this industrially zoned land. It's in the ID 130, so a minimum of 3 acres. There's a little under 6 acres here, five and change, so plenty of land. And if you're familiar with the site, it's also, the courthouse is down here, it's also already developed pretty much. So we're going off into the woods, clearing only the minimum amount necessary to get the job done. And I know in the bylaw there are requirements about screening and maintaining buffers and so forth. So this is a pretty ideal situation in the sense that it's already developed, so there's no new curb cut. You can simply drive in and then simply cut out a little swath so that on 3 sides it's still surrounded by vegetation, but the 4th side is open to existing development anyway. So in the requirement, we have a pre-app meeting is at least 14 days prior to filing. So that's why I'm here tonight. It also says that at that meeting, we can discuss the filing requirements, clarify various things and so forth. Now, I also note in Article 11 that you have this provision for waivers. Now, I haven't officially filed for anything yet, so you can't officially vote on any kind of waiver, but what I can do is describe to you what I intend to provide, and maybe through body language or frowns or whatever, I can get the feedback that no, that's not going to fly or whatever. Basically, we'll give you whatever you want. We're not adverse to paperwork. This is what we do for a living. But I did note that your bylaw is, in my opinion, because I do this every day now, I'm only a wireless guy, is it's a little outdated. I know Mr. Johnson's aware of that. I've already I met Mr. Johnson probably 20 years ago in North Attleboro, I think it was. I know he's been around the wireless for a long time as well, and there's a lot of this language that I recognize that was cut and pasted and copied from other bylaws that's not applicable so much anymore. There's a lot of things that have changed. There's actually some federal law provisions now that aren't in here that it doesn't matter. Federal law overrides, so the building inspector, if he's aware of that, well, it doesn't need to be in here, but I'm just saying that would be something that I thought of when we were having all your discussions about bylaw updates. It's something maybe in next year or whatever, you can look at revamping that. But your wireless bylaw is 14% of your whole bylaw. It's 12 pages. So when you read that, you think, wow, this is really complicated. And I see this a lot. Actually, the way your phone works, the way you can have this little thing that can connect to the rest of the world, that's very complicated. But the real estate development end of this, planning and zoning and land use permitting, it's not very complicated at all. This is much simpler than a house. All we want to do is dig a hole, form up a foundation, and attach a pole, and hang antennas off of that, and surround it by a fence. I mean, I could build one of these things if I knew how to drive an excavator. It's very simple. The land use planning and zoning and site plan discussions, it's very, very simple, very basic. You wouldn't pick that up by reading these bylaws, but they require a lot of information. So what we'll give you is whatever you want, and I want to go over with plans that we've got so far. I've already suggested to the engineers we want to make some tweaks. So the subject property, again, is this little under 6 acres, 5 acres here. There's cars parked there, if you're familiar with it. So we're proposing to be down in the woods. There's a provision in your bylaw that the height shall be, first I should back up, industrial zones it's allowed. That's good, right, by special permit. And then the height is limited to 90 feet. However, the board, by the special permit process, can increase that and waive that up to 180. Well, we don't need to go to 180, but we do need to go to 110. So we're going to ask respectfully when we file to go 20 feet higher than that minimum, just because we already analyzed it at the 90 and it doesn't cut it. It doesn't. If we were, there are some independent tower companies out there that do this for a living. All they want to do is vertical real estate deals where they just build one of these as high as possible, then sublet to everyone. That's not what we do. We're Verizon. We just want to get our antennas on the air.
Just a point, when this all came about, like you said, like 20 years ago, there was the idea that if you make the towers higher, you can get more co-locators.
Right, that's absolutely true. But there's actually a point now where if you go too high, sometimes it overshadows the neighboring cells and causes problems.
Right.
Like I'm working in a town in Western Mass where the bylaw encourages you to go up on hilltops and kind of be away from everyone. We don't want to. That was like an old school analog cellular like 20 years ago, and you want to be really high and just broadcast way out over the county. Now we want to be down, covering everyone's house and everything. So this site was found because it's allowed in the industrial zone. It meets the setbacks. So if we go up to 110, then there's also provision of this so-called fall zone of height plus 25. So 110 plus 25 is 135. So we meet that. We actually had to slide the tower around. At first, it was dead center in our compound, and it didn't meet it. And we don't want to ask for a variance on a site that we could meet it by moving it. So we slid it back. Now we meet that all the way around. So no variance is necessary. And then, you've seen these before, but the compound. So basically, it's a 50 by 50 compound with just a gravel area, and there's ground equipment. Verizon used to, back in the day, go to these prefab shelters, little buildings. They've gotten away from that now, and now we're like everyone else. We just have outdoor weatherproof cabinets. So it's just a pad with some cabinets on it, but enough area in here for future co-locators, which is what the bylaw encourages, and then a simple, straight, sleek, clean monopole with us at the top. But we would build it so it could hold other folks. Obviously, we didn't show that on here, but it would be built, and that could be welcomed as a condition of approval. So what I wanted to do is, that's kind of the overview of why we need it, where we're looking, or where we want to build, and the rest of this is just sort of some detail. But what I wanted to do with this pre-app is to clarify, in my mind, some ambiguities, or again, just respectfully sound you guys out on whether you consider waivers for these sorts of things. And I'm not looking for a vote. I know you can't vote on that now, but just quickly going through the bylaw. So now, Fred, I'm getting the echo feedback. I'm going to stand back here a little bit. I talked about the height plus 25. the ability to go up to 180, but we don't need that. We're going to ask for 110. Now the engineering drawings, I mean, this is what we have right now, and I note that there's a requirement, and you're allowed to waive all these, right? But there's a requirement, for some reason you want all of the properties and everything within 750 feet of the boundaries of the subject property. So it'd be way out here with 2-foot contour intervals. Now I'm going to ask that that be waived, or we're going to overlay that onto like a USGS topo or something. We've provided 1-foot contours in the area where we're proposing development, which in our opinion is what you need to analyze, is there going to be runoff or not. Basically, we're not changing the grade here. It's already flat and developed. We're going to go in, clear some trees, and there it is. There's not going to be a runoff problem. But to provide 2-foot contours out 750 feet around this whole 6-acre parcel, in our opinion, would be onerous and not really benefit your decision making in any way. It's not because it's already developed all the way around there. 750 feet across the street to the courthouse and so forth. And then it talks about these sight lines from 2,500 feet away, north, south, east, west. I've always had trouble with those. You see that a lot of bylaws. 2,500 feet away, you're not going to be able to see this thing. First, if you go 2,500 feet that way, as you know, you're going down the hill, and you're going to look back. If you go 2,500 feet that way, so we'll provide photo simulations where we can see it from any place we can. But this exact, sightline elevation from 25 feet north, south, east, west, I don't think is going to show anything per se. And then the balloon test. This is the big one now. Okay, so a balloon test. It says within 28 days of filing, we have to arrange to either fly a balloon or put a crane there at the height. And the date and time of that has to be advertised at least 14 days, but not more than 21 days. And then the balloon or crane shall be at the site for a minimum of 72 hours. That's 3 days, day and night for 3 days. I've never heard of that before. I mean, to have this thing, when we fly a balloon, it's typically like 4 hours, or maybe for the whole day. But in the afternoon, the wind starts to pick up, the thing gets out of control, and we end up popping a few balloons. And to keep a balloon in the air, 24 hours a day for 3 straight days. And I don't see the point of having the thing at 2 o'clock in the morning and then we have a guy out there tending to it. So, and then it goes on to say that the dates of the balloon crane test shall be subject to the approval of the planning board and building inspector. But see, now here's my dilemma. So it's within 28 days of filing, but I haven't seen you guys yet. And then I have to advertise at least 14, but not more than 21. Then it has to be this 3-day period, but it has to be subject to your approval. So what, I was talking to Mr. Johnson about this and Mr. Burlingame, and because the building inspector is intertwined in your bylaw, it's like the planning board and the building inspector, planning board, and if you read, their building inspector is really involved in this wireless bylaw, is what I was going to suggest to the board is that you delegate the authority to Mr. Johnson and Mr. Burlingame to work that out with me in compliance with the bylaw or as close as possible there too. And then the question would be, if you've done one of these in the recent memory, how did you have it up for 72 days? Or how did you do that? How did you handle that? Because I've never done that before. It's usually up and down in the same day and then maybe again the next day or something. But to keep it up for 72 hours doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So again, you can waive all these. So I guess what I'd be looking for is your authority to Mr. Johnson to have he and Mr. Burlingame work with me to arrive at a reasonable solution to all this. So at the end result will be, it'll be advertised, so you'll be aware of it. You can drive by and check it out. The public will be aware of it, and I will show up the night of the hearing and have it in my application, photo simulations as a result of that. I'll have photos to show you what it all will look like. But so that's a critical one there. And then the filing fee, I see is $750. That's for the special permit. But then there's also this $1,500 consultant fee. I'm going to file and ask for a waiver from that. And again, if at the end of the day you don't agree and you think this is more complicated the way I'm portraying it, because I'm in the business, we'll give you whatever you need and we'll pay the consultant fee. But I'm going to suggest that when you see the application and when you hear my presentation, that I can explain that this is not very, as I said, not very complicated as far as real estate development goes. It's a pole in the ground that you hang antennas off of, and you turn the switch on, and all of a sudden your phone works. There's not a lot of consulting necessary, and this again was written, in my opinion, back in the day when it was more new, perhaps, to the public. Not everyone had a phone, or it was sort of a a less familiar thing to the public. And then there are other provisions in here that ask for things that, in our opinion, the federal government is sort of preempted, whether we like it or not. I don't work for Washington or enjoy Washington telling us what to do any more than you folks do, but we do in the wireless business sort of report to them in the sense that we're FCC licensees. We have to abide by the local land use laws, but we also have certain protections under federal law that come with a burden of having to do certain things, and we have to broadcast at a certain frequency they tell us, and at a certain power. We're a radio station licensed like everyone else. It's two-way radio, but we're still a radio station. So the feds control our power monitoring and all these things, where in the bylaw, these things calling for testing and follow-up, in our opinion, is not necessary. Why would the town want to trouble themselves with that when the federal government already handles that for you or over us? And then there's a term of approval. It has a 10-year time frame. I'm not sure. I was disappointed your attorney had left already, because my question to him would have been, I'm not sure that's necessarily enforceable now, because there's this Section 6409, this federal law that came out 5 years ago that amended the Telecommunications Act, where now once you have a tower in the air, and it had to have gone through a proper zoning approval process to get there, but once it's up and it was built for an FCC activity like this, or a radio station, or a police tower, or the tower at the fire station or whatever, once that's up, then it's eligible to co-locate on by future carriers. And I'm not sure a time limit on that coming down anymore is permitted, because the whole point of that law is to make use of infrastructure. This is nationwide. We're trying to build out these wireless networks, not just Verizon, but all our competitors. Everyone's trying to build it out to benefit the public safety. And so if there's an unused tower over there, if there's already a tower somewhere, we'll use that thing first, before you go build a new one, which is what Mr. McNeil did when he went looking in the area. There aren't any towers, as you know. And that was the other thing. There's a provision in the bylaw. It can't be more than or closer than 1.5 miles to another tower. I'm not sure that's necessarily enforceable anymore, but it's not. It doesn't affect us in our case, because our nearest tower is a little bit over that, down in Connecticut somewhere, and then the other ones are either in town or nearby. They're more distant, like the one on Blackmer Road's 3.3 miles. There's one in Dresser Hill, it's 2.6. One over in Webster, it's 2.4, and so forth. So that's kind of the nature of it. It was, as I said, when I saw 12 pages of bylaw, I thought I could probably boil this down to like 3 or 4 or 5 and still give you what you need to make a decision. If at the end of the day you're like, no, we need that section, you don't get it, we want that, I'll give you whatever you need. We'll ask for continuance, we'll come back. But what I'm going to suggest is when you see our application we put together, it should be comprehensive enough that you'll be able to, get it and concur with the simplicity of it. But what I would ask for respectfully tonight, I know you can't discuss those waivers or vote on those per se, but would you be able to at least authorize Mr. Johnson to work in conjunction with Mr. Burlingame and the applicant to work out this whole balloon float thing? Or do you have any thoughts on that 72-hour, keeping it in the air for 72 hours? Because that's an odd one, frankly.
If I remember right, the one on Dresser Hill Road, which is a monopole, I was on the board when they did that one. I can't remember if they put the crane up or if they did a balloon, but they did it just during daylight hours.
Okay.
3 consecutive days in a row.
Okay.
So it was like, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 3 days in a row. So that the people in town that are affected by it can drive by and take a look and say, yeah, it's not going to be much of an eyesore, or, wow, it's really up there,
Yeah.
Great call, it crane.
You think it was a crane?
Was it a crane? So we have to discuss that with Verizon. A lot of times crane tests are not practical if you're deep in the woods, but we're not here. However, we are going to be in the woods, so we don't want to start clearing stuff before we even have an approval.
Mm-hmm.
So if we did a crane, we can talk about this behind the scenes with Verizon, but if we did a crane, what we could probably propose we do is park the crane as close as possible and have them like boom over as close as possible. So the exact tower is not going to be like dead on, but it'd be close enough. I would hope that people could get the idea.
Your height will be there.
Yeah, would you be okay with that? I mean, that.
Yeah, if the top of the boom was at the 110-foot mark and the tip of the boom was over the location of where the monopole is going to be installed, I think that would be.
If we do a balloon, we could probably get in there. Usually with the balloon we can get in pretty close, but with a crane you can't always get very close. So that's what we'll have to decide. But we're wondering if you would defer or allow Mr. Johnson to have the authority to work that out with us. Because I don't see logistically how this, 28 days of filing, but then I advertise, but then it's subject to your discretion, and I don't see how logistically that's going to work. But whereas Mr. Johnson, I know, has office hours here, and you guys only meet every 2 weeks or whatever. So.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm good with that.
Yeah. You've had experience with the construction, so how do you feel about it?
I don't think it would be an issue. I mean, I know when the one went up on Dresser Hill Road, we had a full-time planner, so she was here throughout the whole thing, and I know she worked with them very closely.
Just do it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that's all.
Yeah, so, given the fact that you're now forced to work with part-time help and us meeting twice a month, yeah, I think, Madam Chairman, I would make a motion that we grant authority to Town Planner Don Johnson and Town Building Inspector Nelson Burlingame to work with Verizon on a proposed cell phone tower for the location in the corner of West Main Street and Hall Road.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I'm just curious if, I know you don't have these in front of you, but the gist of what I'm showing you with the plans and, 2-foot contours, 700, I mean, is there anything in particular that rings a bell? Like, oh, no, last time we needed that thing, like something special that I'm missing that you want to make sure I provide? Because I'll give you, like I said, I'll give you whatever you want.
How far in the woods are you going to be in from the parking lot?
So 135 feet off the road this way, 164 feet from this lot line, 360 from here, and then this is,
Which is West Main Street?
At the bottom.
West Main Street's at the
Okay.
bottom.
I just couldn't.
first of all.
Are you
Okay.
planning on going through Universal Tag's parking lot to get into the
Yeah,
woods?
exactly. So basically, we as Verizon, this looks a little weird, but and this you could say it's kind of a fiction, but it's a legal necessity. We need to have an easement on record with our landowner to get into the property in case this were to be sold. The new owner wants to do something or other. It's like, well, okay, no, this is our way in. This is all existing paved. Right now, when you drive in there, there's cars parked all over, but you can go around like this, get down. That's the way we intend to go in. It's not that we're completely inflexible. Like, say this were to be sold and the new owner wanted to put a building right there, well, fine. As long as we can get in somehow, we need to get to our site. And once one of these things is built, there's nothing much that goes on back there. I like to call it a non-use. You have your table of uses. This is like a non-use. It's this inanimate object out there that just sits there and nothing happens. Once a month, some guy shows up, so he or she needs to be able to get there. That's what this is. That represents the access easement, but there's no new curb cut, there's no more paving. We're basically just going in that way. But the distance off of the tree line there, let's see. Okay, so let me see if I can measure that. Like we're going about 40 feet, the monopole would be about 40 feet in. Actually, here's the edge of pavement right there. Yeah, 40 feet off the edge of existing pavement. So it'd be cut in like that, but this will all stay vegetated on 3 sides.
And how far in from West Main Street?
135.
feet.
Okay.
So that's that height plus 25 feet requirement. So we'll need no variances. And one thing I like about your bylaw is this waiver provision. And I heard you discussing that earlier on the non-conforming uses. It makes a lot of sense because a variance is a difficult and onerous standard, even though we have some extra benefit under federal law for variances. It's just a normal application process. It's more onerous. So the fact that the board has the ability under the special permit process to waive certain things is very helpful.
Well, I could tell you, just from my opinion, I'm only one member of the board, so I didn't think anything that you asked for possible waivers is a deal breaker. So I would say have all your list of waivers that you want put together, or that you would request or need to request, and put that together and give it to Dawn, and have it for when you submit your application, so that we can go through it, or even before, if you want to submit it before. you know, just, we can have a look at it, so if there is something out there that's earth-shattering, we can let you know.
It's maybe a sort of a minor thing in the great scheme of life, but there was no application for a new wireless tower. There's no application form that we have. It's strictly for co-location. I
not-
looked and looked and looked.
It's not in the forms book?
No. What I found was, and I'm not sure if when you did this about 10 years ago, or whatever it was, did you make your own form?
Did I make my own form?
Yeah.
Oh.
I couldn't find this.
No, it's got the town of Dudley offices right there.
I know.
I bet I have this. So what date was this? See, it in my
2006, wasn't it?
2007. Yeah, 10 years ago. I mean, I probably have this in my files. You want me to just use this again?
If you do, could you send me a file to Word, preferably? Word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this, like you said, isn't something that comes up every day,
Right.
so.
It's been so long since there have been new towers constructed, really.
Right, I mean, in 9 years that I've been on the
The
board, that one
technology is demanding it now.
on Dressel Hill Road was the last one, in the last 9
I,
years.
for one, can say I've done a ton of those, so,
Yeah.
yeah. I've worked with anywhere from DigSafe with National Grid to powering, so, underground power, you name it, so.
Oh, wow, okay. All right, so you would.
I'm very familiar with the process.
The simplicity of the installation.
Very, yes.
Just basically a big counterweight. You know, you have those pen holders? It's a big slab of granite, and you put your pen in there.
Basically a giant flagpole.
It's just a big counterweight that's buried, and then this pole bolted to it. It's so simple as far as real estate development goes, you know.
It's definitely a needed use.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Need a copy of this?
No, now that I know that I have that I have copies of all of them. Well, did you make that for me? Sure. Okay. December 2007.
Okay, moving on, other business, the Village District Walk, I'm sure that's on hold.
Yeah, until at least June 21st.
Yeah. Approval of consultant vouchers and payment bills. So,
Sign that at the end.
yeah. Other town notices, I don't know, do we have other town notices in our folder?
Yeah, there's a few, there's nothing
Okay.
really outstanding.
And correspondence. So we can look at
A
those
couple-
on our
A couple of
own?
the things that I want to go over with you.
Okay. Do we have it in our books? What tab are you under, Don?
I'm right now under G. Actually, G and H. That's where I have the email that I referenced about the Community Development and Planning Community Partner Award to the town of Dudley. You don't have that under tab G or H. I have a couple extra copies.
Thank you.
Yes, his name, Sean?
I'm sorry?
Carl Gehrig? Yes, will you ask me his name?
Oh, no, I was looking for, I've got his information, that's all. I didn't see the paper you had back here.
It's on J. I think it's under J.
Well, I got it, I guess.
This one under J.
Okay, so you want to bring our attention to this email?
Yeah.
The good news is always welcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
anybody wants to go.
Oh, okay. So this is an announcement from Central Mass Regional Planning. It's an invitation. I'd like to extend an invitation to you, along with the Dudley Board of Selectmen, Planning Board members, and department heads to attend our annual dinner on June 8th, 2017, at the Blackstone National Golf Club in Sutton. I am pleased to announce CMRPC will be presenting the Community Development and Planning Community Partnership Award to the town of Dudley. Congratulations. Please let me know how many will be attending from the town before May 26th. And that's from Janet Pierce, Executive Director of CMRPC.
Where you going?
Sure. Why
First,
not?
first I've seen.
I don't get out much.
Okay, just let me know.
So you said June 8th was a Friday night?
Do you have another copy of that, Don, by any chance?
Yes.
Here, you can have this.
I don't have one.
She can have that one, Don.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, can't find the agenda for tonight. Here it is. Okay.
It's a Thursday night.
Thursday night?
Is Thursday night? Okay.
Okay.
Budget's getting pretty low for this fiscal year. With the voucher that we have for the hearing notice, and the voucher I'm asking for to attend the Mass Association of Planning Directors meeting, would be about $60 left. But it is almost, it's well on the way to June, so I guess we're okay. I think I have any other expenses. I have plenty of pencils and pens and paper and things like that. So, all
Should be good.
right. And there's another one that came up, which I think I would like to go to, or I probably should go to. You can just sort of pass this around. Smart Growth Conference Program, just to know what's going on in the state. And there's a couple of things here that I'm not particularly interested in, but for example, ones that I might be looking at are one size doesn't fit all, effective strategies for suburbs and towns for economic development. Advanced placemaking. In other words, the economic development focused areas. Take a look through this, and that's $50. So that'll pretty much zero out the budget.
Down to $10.
That's next week, Thursday. I would adjust my hours next Thursday, so I'm in the office for 19 hours. But if I have to do it, adjust the hours next week, or if they come in Friday or something.
Are you-
So the money that you want to use is in the current budget, it's not out of the new
It's in the
budget?
current budget, right, but I'm just telling you, it's getting pretty close.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with using it if we have it in the budget, because otherwise, if we don't use it, it's just going to go into the general fund.
Yeah. I mean, at these conferences, you find out, obviously network with people and
Right.
get to find out a lot of what other towns are doing, and plus funding resources and, resources for updating your bylaws, you name it. So, I like to keep in touch with these things.
Yep.
Mhm. So are you thinking of going to the May 18th one, the
I'm
Smart
going to
Growth
the May
one?
18th one. I'll have to sign
Sorry?
up. I'll have to sign up. I'll
Okay.
probably have to use a personal check and get reimbursed or something like that, but,
That's fine. If you want to go, I don't see a problem with that.
okay. And, if you... I'm gonna take more control in this next time. I had these photocopies done for me, so. There are 4 vouchers tonight.
Yep.
2 for Graves Engineering, 1 for the newspaper article, the hearing notice, and 1 for that Mass Planning Director's workshop that I'm going to on June 15th to June 16th.
So do you have those vouchers for us to sign this evening?
Give me your book.
I'm sorry,
Give me
couldn't,
your book.
they're in our book.
Yeah.
Okay. Under what tab?
Well, let's see.
Okay. And we still have to sign the Dave's Way thing,
Yep.
They're under I in my book.
Under I. Okay.
Is everything coming up?
I got 'em right here. J.
You want to close the meeting and we can do this?
Yeah, I think we should. We just need to submit our signatures on vouchers and that
Please wait for it.
Dave's Way. So would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion made to adjourn the meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
9:15.
Sign this out.